Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of Justice for All Now. Joining us today is Sister Fareedah Shaheed. Fareedah Shaheed is an online safety educator teaching parents and kids healthy digital relationships. After recognizing the lack of representation in these digital communities, she founded her company, Sikuva, and the Safe Kids movement to help parents and kids establish a safety first mindset online. In 2020, she was given the award of Cybersecurity Personality of the Year and was Forbes 30 under 30. We also wanted to discuss human rights and how to keep human rights activists safe online with Fareedah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
To start us off, Fareedah, what got you interested in the field of cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity, honestly, to me, is because we're having so much technology these days. And for me, one of the best ways to understand the future is to understand what we're doing now and how can we stay safe. So I got into cybersecurity because I felt like it was the now and it was the future. And I knew that if I focus on the safety side, there's so many other avenues that I could go into. And so that's why I was very passionate about the field.
And what you founded Sukuva, and you were focused on safety of children online. Why the
Yes.
focus on children?
I grew up as an online gamer, so my background is in cybersecurity awareness, threat
Mm.
intelligence, and as a kid, I absolutely loved games and actually still love games till today. And when I was doing workshops for corporate, for internal and external clients, I had a lot of parents in the room and they wanted to learn more about my experiences online. And they always came up to me to ask me questions about how to protect their kids online. And so I was lovingly led to doing internet safety for kids. And so that is what I do today all day.
Mm. Now, could you tell us more and share more with the audience about what is exactly cybersecurity and more about your company and its use as a resource for online safety?
Absolutely. So, cybersecurity is just anything that you do online to protect your joy and to protect your peace of mind. So, if you're an activist, you want to protect your peace of mind, you want to make sure that you're safe. And if you are a parent and you have kids, you want to make sure that you're protecting their innocence and their joy. So, that is what cybersecurity is every measure that you take, whether it's a technology measure or it's a conversation with yourself or you're with your kids about what not to post online. That is all cybersecurity. And my company, Sakuva, and the Safe Kids movement, we provide resources, education, guides, workshops to make sure that all people know how to protect themselves online.
Mm. Now, let's talk about protecting people online. Um, as a parent, and I have boys that are gamers, my husband's a gamer, and so I certainly see how things have changed online, even in the gaming industry, from when it was just I was newly married and my husband would be gaming versus now with Twitch and Discord. And one of the stories I like to share is when my 14-year-old son was talking to somebody, a 17 he thought was a 17-year-old boy, teaching him how to maneuver through the game, and it turned out to be a much older gentleman. And I'm glad that we sort of intervened on time. But what could I have done ahead of time to keep my son safe online?
To be honest, incidents will happen. And I don't want to say, oh, there's nothing you can do. Obviously, there's something you can do. But those incidents, you did the right thing. So being there for your children, having conversations with them, having open, non judgmental conversations, understanding their love for games, and being there for them is one of the best ways to protect your kids online. So that when a situation happens, they feel comfortable telling you about it. Or when you find out, it's easier to have that conversation. So it's never that nothing will ever happen online, but more that when something happens, you are there to walk your kids through that and get them to a safer place.
So what would be your top 10 tips that you would give parents?
Oh, absolutely. The first, honestly, is therapy. I know typically we always talk about technology and safety, and we think I have to be tech savvy. I have to know more than my kids. I have to know about gaming. But to be honest, therapy and building a safe space for your kids is the number one way to protect your kids online. Because if your kids don't feel comfortable talking to you because they know that you're going to be upset or you're going to yell or you're going to be mad and you're not going to apologize if that happens, if you slip up, if they know that they're judged for what they're doing online, and they know that they're going to be punished, they're not going to come to you when something happens. And that creates sneaky kids, that creates kids that don't talk to their parents about anything whatsoever. They don't feel comfortable. So when you're going to therapy, you're understanding how to create a safe space for yourself, what triggers you have that your kids might be triggering you in certain instances, and then how to forgive yourself, how to forgive your kids, and how to have a better environment in the household. Even if you feel like, oh, everything's perfect, everything's fine, we all have trauma to work towards. So number one is connection of self. Then two is connection with your kids. So building a safe space, talking to them, have moments online where you're connecting over online things. So if they love to be on Discord, then maybe you're on Discord with them every now and then. Maybe you like talk towards Discord. Maybe you text them through Discord. If they love to be on TikTok, you can send TikTok videos with each other. So not only are you prioritizing offline connections where they're exercising, they're playing with their friends or whatever it is, but you're also creating online positive associations. And the third thing is looking at the settings on all of these accounts. So, what security settings, what privacy settings, what safety settings do they have available for you that you can turn on? Because unfortunately, a lot of those settings are not on by default. And if you want to protect your kids from a hacker getting into their account or a predator grooming them from information posted online, then looking at your settings, looking at what you're posting online is really important.
So you were talking about settings. So would this be someone, so even a non-tech savvy person, if they bought a smartphone or an iPad or a gaming system for um, their child, where would they go to learn more about settings, more about would it come with the a pamphlet that comes in the box, or is there online resources that they can go check out?
Yes, absolutely. Typically, when you get a piece of device or you get an application, if you go straight to the company's website, they usually have like parental guides if you're a parent, if you're trying to protect your kid. If you are someone who's an activist or you're a school teacher or you're an engineer, whoever you are, and you want to learn how to protect yourself using the new thing that you just bought, going to the manufacturer's website, going to the application's website, they typically have safety and security tabs, and they show you exactly the steps to take to protect yourself or your kids, your family on those particular applications or technology. So, absolutely.
Now, tell me more. Like, I know your mom. So, tell me more about your journey and what you both learned through her parenting journey and your daughtering journey that helps you become a better cybersecurity educator.
She always put her faith in God as the forefront. I always said she never had like parental monitoring or parental controls. Not that it is bad, it was just her way of parenting me. And she always said that, hey, if anything were to ever happen, if you're getting into trouble and it's going to be detrimental to your mental, emotional, physical health or spiritual health, then I'm going to know about it. God's going to tell me in a dream, I'm going to have a feeling. So that was what kept me on my toes. Not that I always listened to her, but it did keep me on my toes. And then also reminded me that my parent was not the end all be all. So a lot of kids are like afraid of what their parents were what they're going to say. But for me, I was afraid of my spiritual health, my mental health, my emotional health. So there are certain boundaries I didn't personally cross because at that age I knew that that would be detrimental. And then there are certain boundaries I did cross, and then I had to learn which what fuels the work that I do today. So I would say really her faith, her relationship with God, understanding that she doesn't own me, she can't control me, but she's tasked with a huge responsibility to make sure that I have the tools and resources to protect myself. And then second, she as I was getting older, she prioritized therapy. And our relationship got really, really close because she always had an open, non judgmental space. Anything I told her, very cool, calm, collected. She was not going to go off on me because I said I did something that she didn't want me to do, even though I knew she was upset. She would stay calm. She would be cool. She would say, okay. It was very non judgmental. So that really helped me stay safe online because if I knew that she was not on my side, then I would have went into um, a bad side of the internet.
That's so important to be able to have that open line of communication and be able to speak. Now, what would happen? Let me share another incident that happened in our community right here in Maryland, where a young autistic and severely uh, mentally handicapped, disabled young woman, and she attends school. Lovely, beautiful member of our community, and young people in her school superimposed a picture of her on a pornographic image and that was circulated around schools for several weeks before her parents even found out about it. And we've talked to her mom about it, and this is somebody who's extremely tech savvy, knows what's up, but still they were
Mhm.
not able to protect their very vulnerable child from something like this. Now, in a situation like that, what would be your advice to not only your family, but to the community as well? And how you undo that damage that may have been done?
This huge amount of damage, and I'm so sorry to both the parents and the girl that had to go through that. To be honest, it really is a lack of healing and understanding, the kindness, of graciousness, to be honest, of the people in her community. She
Mm,
should not have to feel shame for that happening, and I know a lot of people, a lot of family, that's the typical reaction is, "Oh my god, this happened." It's not her fault, number 1. So I would pour all of the resources into making sure that she's spiritually okay, that she's mentally okay, she's emotionally okay, and then making sure that everyone in that school and community takes classes or takes definitely a class on understanding graciousness and kindness within the community, but also to yourself first. To be honest, it's really with yourself first, because
mm,
people who did that absolutely do not like themselves. There's no person that's happy that likes themselves would ever do that to somebody else. So figuring out ways that there can be like therapy, meditation, whether it's journaling, and prioritizing that within the community. I know it's difficult for schools, even with communities as well, but having that as a priority. But as a family, like you said, no matter how tech savvy you are as a parent, no matter how security savvy you are, there are certain things that you're just never going to be able to control. No one can control that, because if we could, it would never happen. So to giving children the resources to understand what happened to them is, number 1, not their fault. It is totally okay to feel upset, to feel angry, but it is not on you whatsoever. And because the people who did that should be the ones who feel the shame, because it's vile and it's absolutely disgusting to do that for someone else. And they should feel some type of way about it and change their behavior so they never do that to, number 1, themselves, because they're hurting themselves, and then also other people.
mm. Now, when we talk about it's so easy, especially in this day when we put out much of our lives on social media through Instagram and Snapchat, where your geolocation is turned on and you can tell where a person lives or what school they might go to. What are those sort of common sense sort of practices that we should adopt when we are posting about our lives or about our children online?
Anytime you download a new app, just look at the settings to make sure you have your locations turned off before you post a photo. Make sure that nothing in the photo is giving out information about yourself or the people around you. Everyone in the photo has consented to the photo if there's anybody else on the photo. And also being sure that the location isn't tagged in the photo. So there is a new app right now called Be Real that a lot of kids are on. A lot of people don't know that if you don't have your location services turned off, and if you're not checking before you post, it can actually post your live location right then and there. So being mindful of new apps that you may be downloading, like Be Real, is not about the app in particular, it's about the settings that you're putting in. And a lot of the security and safety settings are not on by default. And so you have to do your due diligence about, is my full name online? My location online? Is where I'm going to school or going to work or traveling online? So just being mindful of that before you post is very important.
Interesting. Now, segueing into that, just that, because what we've seen an astronomical jump in human trafficking right here in the DMV area, as well as across the United States, not and overseas as well, with people being brought in containers, human beings being trafficked into the country, but from state to state as well. Um, what role has cybersecurity or the internet played in human trafficking?
A huge role, especially in the pandemic because people weren't doing things outside anymore. So social media has played a very, very big role in human trafficking, in online grooming, in crimes against women and children. And so we definitely have to look at the online space to figure out what ways can we stay safe, but help other people stay safe. So how having resources and guides for our own communities so they understand exactly what to look out for and what not to do, or some red flags if you're getting a message or someone's trying to connect with you, or you're getting something. There's for little girls a lot, it's like, oh, you look really nice, you might be into modeling, there's a contract here, you can sign here. So those are things that our children, our kids or women are getting into that can lead them to be more vulnerable online, especially if you're posting your emotions online, if you're posting a lot of details about yourself. It can be very easy to find out information about you and target you.
I know this has happened to my own daughter, where not the modeling contracting definitely, if she got that, oh, you're being scouted by Adidas, and
Mhm.
show up here for the shoot, as well as the grooming, and we imagine that groomers look a certain way, or will sort of target you in a certain way. But
Mhm.
this was a young man. In the picture that was shown was a 25-year-old mom of a little baby. All her Instagram pictures were
Yeah.
so adorable, mostly of the child or with her husband or her mother-in-law cooking, things like that. And it turned out to be a groomer, and who was just talking to my daughter back and forth. And thank God that she was able to come to me. And again, going back to your
Yes.
first point about the communication and giving children that open, safe space to speak to, so that she was able to talk to me about what some of the things that this person was saying, and it just seemed off. It just didn't seem right.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. So, before the break, we were talking about how a majority of people these days rely on social media for means of communication. And Fareedah was sharing tips on how to stay safe on social media platforms, as well as internet security. My next question to you, Fareedah, is about, for example, a lot of us, if you go onto pages like the white pages, or whofinder.com or something like that, and you type in the person's name or even sometimes their telephone number, and they will show you where that person lived, what their name was before they got married, all the past 6 or 7 addresses, um, like so much information about a human being, that in the hands of the wrong person could be extremely dangerous. What's your suggestion or advice for people who don't want all that information out there in the public?
Absolutely. So you can definitely reach out to each individual website to get it taken down. You can email them. They might have an automated process where you can submit something and then they'll remove it for you.
Mm.
However, that's not the best way to do it because there are hundreds and hundreds of sites like that. And even if you were to remove it once, they can always get your information again through whether another service that you sign up for. And so it can always keep populating. So what I always say is to go and find a reputable data remover service that that can not only remove all of the websites for you, all the hundreds of them in one fell swoop, but also if there are any ones that come up in the future based off of the things that you're subscribing to, or different companies that are selling your information. Also, insurance companies could be selling your information. It's not just about exactly what you're doing. Then they
Mm,
can keep that out of the internet for you as well.
okay. Do you have any suggestions for some names that our audience could look into?
Yes, so there is a service called Optery, Optery, and definitely look into that. Do your research and decide if that's best for you.
Okay, Optery.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, because that's something definitely that many of my colleagues, especially who are in this field of human rights work, um, that is something that, and we'll talk more about this later in the show, is how human rights activists and workers are targeted around the world, and as well as some of these issues of fake news that we're faced with on a regular basis. Now, I wanted to learn more about you, Fareedah. Tell me, so far in your very short career, mashallah, you've been named Forbes 30 under 30 and have been doing just amazing work. Tell me what, in your eyes, is one of the biggest accomplishments you've been able to achieve.
Oh, wow. My biggest accomplishment is keeping my faith. I believe that's like the most important thing personally for me. Spiritually being sound, and then second, emotionally being sound. So going to therapy and continuously bettering myself. Those are the foundations to all of the other success. Because without the foundation of spiritual safety, emotional safety, intellectual safety, none of the other things would be possible, and none of the other things that will about to happen will be possible either. So for me, that's my biggest win and accomplishment of all, because then that means that no matter what I do, I can better do it from a great space. And then whenever I pass away, that I pass away happy and good.
Alhamdulillah. That's such a
Alhamdulillah.
positive outlook to life, and to keep that in mind, that this is, because a lot of times people think about cybersecurity and they think that it is a field that is like you're fighting Russia online,
Well,
and
yeah.
so what are some of the, like, if you had to share something about this field, what would be one thing that you absolutely want people to know and take away?
That anybody can be in this field. You don't have to be going online fighting Russia. I mean, that's definitely a part of it, obviously. There's many other places, but there's so many things that you can do. So I've seen people from coming, they've started their career as a teacher and they went into cybersecurity. They started their career as a plumber, they went to cybersecurity. They started their career as a stay-at-home mom or dad and then went into cybersecurity. The people straight off of high school or middle school, they got interested into it. Others, they started hacking around as a kid and they started hacking into things and got into trouble. And so they got a little bit of warning and decided, okay, let me go on the good side. Is actually better this way. So no matter what background you have, no matter how old you are definitely, your experiences, your understanding, your expertise is definitely needed for the field.
Hmm. That's so, and there are many aspects to this field as well. Could you
Yes.
talk a little bit more about that? For example, what are hackers, and what do they do? How can hacking be used for something positive?
Yes, so hacking is just any way to break into the system. And so you
Mm,
might be breaking into the system consensually, meaning you have a written agreement between you and the person that you're breaking into their company, and you're saying, "Hey, I'm only breaking into your house, so to speak, your house being your website or your application, just so I can see where the weaknesses are so that you can secure it." So that is good hacking. It's called ethical hacking. And those are people can do that as well. You also can do where you're developing application that is secure. You're developing code that's secure. There's the aspect of teaching and education and awareness, which is what I absolutely love doing. I thought I wanted to do incident response. So incident response is similar to 911, but for the online space. So if something is happening online, there's a virtual 911 and you call a security team to help patch that up. And so
mhm.
that's what I thought I wanted to do, until I realized that human beings are like the most beautiful, amazing, interesting, complex things on this earth. And it seemed quite fun to work with people and then eventually work with parents and kids. So there's so many avenues that you can take. And really the sky is the limit.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And And in order to get into this field, what would a young person who is watching, what could they, as you said, some of them have gone in from middle school and high school. Is there a degree that you get in cybersecurity? And where are some, what are some good programs that people can look into?
So yeah, even though I'm young, when I first started out, there was not a lot of like degrees in cybersecurity, so I didn't have a lot of options in that sense. But I did have a couple since we're in the DMV area, so there's a couple universities that offered that. But I decided to opt out of college and start my career right away. I had an opportunity for an internship at a really great firm, and I started full time in my position there. So I did not go through the degree route or the complete certification route. Mine is based purely on experience and expertise in the area of working with so many different people and families and organizations. And so you can take it however it works for you. So some people do the degrees and certifications, only certifications, no degrees, no degrees or certifications. Really, the point in the field is, do you know how to get the work done? At the end of the day, if we need something done, will it be done, and will it be done in excellence? And so long as you're continuously learning and networking and talking to people and making sure that you're the best of yourself, you'll always be successful no matter what. So you don't have to be tech savvy, but there are definitely roles where being tech savvy is very, very important. And so you have to decide what works best for you.
Mm. And you work at Cisco currently, or you have a big project that you've done for Cisco. What was the aspect of your work at Cisco?
Yeah, so I did a couple projects with Cisco, mainly to do more like articles and research and mentorship. And so I worked with a lot of different companies. So I worked with NASA, worked with Mozilla. I'm trying to remember all the ones I can say publicly. There are some that I can't. I signed an NDA, so I can't name them, but they're pretty Fortune 50, Fortune 100 type companies. I do education awareness and workshops. I work with communities. I do partnerships with different organizations to raise awareness. So anytime people want to understand more about internet safety and security, in particular to kids, then that's what I do. And I also am an ambassador for Google's Women Tech Makers. So do mentorship and coaching and events. And so I work with a lot of different companies just to make sure that more people are coming into tech of diverse backgrounds, but also that we're protecting children online.
Excellent. That is just fabulous. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages. Cybersecurity laws and policies have a direct impact on human rights, particularly the right to privacy, freedom of expression, and the free flow of information. And as you know, in our current political climate, that human rights activists are heavily targeted online. Let's talk more about this with Fareedah. And Fareedah, can you tell us what you've seen on this issue while you work in this field? And then we'll talk about some solutions.
Absolutely. So there's definitely a lot to talk about in terms of laws and policies. That is not my direct expertise. However, privacy in terms of how we deal with it on a daily basis is. And I definitely see a lot of activists not understanding the security and safety implications of different applications that they download or the general security habits that they have. And it's mostly because education is not really out there. And there are so many ways that we can protect ourselves just to make sure that no matter what we're posting online, whether it's activism or it's just your daily thoughts or what you're doing, that you're doing it in a safe and a secure way.
So some of the things that even us with as a human rights organization, and I see this. For example, we were targeted by the Indian government, and they read through old blogs. They know I have 4 children, and I'm sure they've picked this information from publicly available data that I probably posted on my Facebook page. And since then, I've made so much of my Instagram and Facebook private because there's a big difference in being a writer and a commentator in the Muslim community and doing human rights work, right? So and now that I look back at my own career, I might have not written about some of the things that I write about. If I had known 10 years from now, 5 years from now, I'm going to be working on stopping genocide in India, or in China. So this is, this some of the things that, like, I can talk about my experiences. I get regularly get calls from the Chinese embassy asking me to come into the embassy because I've left some paperwork there. And this is something that, sometimes it takes you back. You're like, oh my God, how did they get my number? But that's not that hard if your number is on, all sorts of posters for events and things like that. So this is something I definitely can say touches me on a personal level. And then it's scary too. But then at some point you're like, okay, this is the jihad of our time, right?
Mhm.
To to put the truth out there, to fight using whatever tools we have, and our tools is media or writing or social media. These are tools that we can do to save people's lives, especially
It's
other
true.
Muslims around in targeted areas. Now, keeping all of that in mind, um, what if you were giving me advice? What are some things that generally community leaders, especially in the Muslim community, what have you observed that we tend to do that you think we should be more cognizant of?
Of course, the information that you post online, but to be honest, there are certain things that are out there, like your number or your full name that we talked about before, that have nothing to do with what you directly did. And
Mhm,
also, I do want to say that there's no blame placed on anybody, to be honest. I've made mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. We're human. That's the name of the game. The whole point is just to be just a little bit more secure than you were before. So it's just
mhm,
building blocks. It's really not trying to be perfect. But there are data breaches that happen to big companies that leak your information, and there's really nothing you can do about it besides having identity theft protection. So something like identity theft protection on yourself, especially your kids as well, because kids are being targeted in a huge way with identity theft. So that's number one. Number two is removing your information. So hiring a data broker website. And those things don't cost more than, it might cost $300 for like 1 year. That's like on the very expensive side. It could
mhm,
be between 150 to 300. Managing your passwords really well, because when you're an activist, when you're someone who is a leader of a community, you have a lot of information not only about yourself but the other members of your community and
mhm,
the campaigns that you're doing. And you don't want anybody else outside, malicious or not, but mostly malicious, to get into your accounts. So
mhm,
having a good password, using password managers. So one password manager is good as onepassword.com. Looking into that, generating secure passwords. And then if you are somebody who is highly targeted, you have to have two-factor authentication on all of your accounts. And that is
mhm,
just saying that there's two ways of authenticating to the account. You don't just have a username and password, you have a username, you have a password, and then you have a one-time code that comes to your phone or comes to a physical device, and then you put it in. But if you're an activist, if you're a community leader, you have to take it a step further. So you want to get a security key, that's physical key, that generates the codes, or you place it on your phone or you place it into your computer, and it provides the authentication. So it's something that you have. So it's even more secure than the other methods. So those are ways that you can stay more secure.
mhm. Those are some excellent tips. Um, and as I was writing, thinking of them as you were saying them, I can see definitely there have been a shift in awareness. And just for example, what happened at WhatsApp a couple of last year, where
Mhm.
there was a data breach, and so many people left WhatsApp because of that breach. And sometimes it takes things like that for people to realize, hey, I am just as vulnerable, and for people to switch over to more secure platforms like Signal that a lot of activists use. So, should we be keeping all of this in mind? Um, what should we be scared?
No. No. So I have a thought process that I go to through, and this is from Brooke Castillo. She's a life coach, and she says that everything in life is a circumstance. That's just the fact. And then we have thoughts, and our thoughts influence the feelings that we have in our body, and those feelings give us influence the actions that we take in our lives, and then those are what gives us the results. So if our
Mm,
thought is that we should be scared, the feeling that we get is that we're scared, and then what actions do we take? when we're scared, will that give us the results that we want? Typically not. So, yes, of course, we're going to be scared, but should we be scared? No. But we should do our due diligence to make sure that when we're scared, we have the tools, the resources. And tools and resources don't just mean, oh, a guide or a checklist, but it could be something spiritual. It could be
Mm.
something mental, it could be something emotional, it could be a support group. And so, yes, you will be scared, but we don't have to be scared, and it is okay. And we can also decide to to look at things in a different way, even though we are scared, because it's totally okay. Well, especially when you're doing work like this, of course. But you don't want to put that in your brain every single time. So for me, security and safety is about peace of mind. So for me, instead of saying, should we be scared? Personally, for me, I would say, okay, how can I develop some peace of mind so that I can fight the fight similar to what you're doing? Because you're doing phenomenal job. And so we need more of that energy, and that energy can only come from the thoughts that produce the feelings needed to get the results that we want.
So, so important, so very important. And as now, if someone was put into a situation where there was a security breach or they were being targeted, are there, where could they turn to? Could they turn to law? What should they do? Like the first step, if you do find out that, okay, I am being targeted or there has been a security breach um, in my devices, what are some steps that they can take that are just common sense, aside from perhaps letting your local police department know? Um, what else can be done?
It really depends on what's going on and what's happening and what devices, what online accounts, are there threats being made on your life or who you are. If that's the case, of course, involving law enforcement and telling them very detailed, this is exactly what happens, this is what they're saying, and being very urgent with the message. Otherwise, they're probably going to ignore you. So just really just being very persistent and telling them exactly what's happening can be really helpful. If you have an online account that's being hacked and someone's trying to take over it, then adding extra security, changing your passwords is very important. Having unique, long, special character type passwords. To be honest, the best passwords are long passwords. You don't even have to have a special character in them. And your
Mhm.
special character could be a space. Most people don't know that, but you can have a space in your password, and that is a special character. So
Oh, wow.
changing that into something that's really secure can be helpful. If something's happening on your phone, doing a factory reset, and then, of course, making sure you have a backup at all times so that if you ever have to do a factory reset, if you ever have to wipe your phone for whatever reason, if you have to go to the Geek Squad or whoever to help you, then you're able to do that. So it really just depends on the nature of the attack.
And these are such so practical, and they're so like you don't we think that it has to be something, as you were saying earlier, like super technical, or like installing, I don't know, some ironclad uh, program onto your phone. But a lot of times it is just super common sense, and just being, just like you lock the door to your
Hmm.
house and then you put a latch on, or you lock your car. The similar, like, I think
Hmm.
what has happened is technology has changed so fast, but we haven't kept up with things like that, that this is just a lock to my door. Whereas locks to doors have existed for hundreds of years. So that is definitely, I think it's a mindset change when it comes to um, personal privacy and security online. Um,
Absolutely.
so as you, you've been doing this for a while, and as you've seen, what are some of the most common questions that you've um, you've been asked, that you've answered, and that have really given peace, like the peace of mind that you were talking about earlier, to some of your audiences?
That you don't have to know everything to protect yourself online. I think that's the most surprising for most people. And yes, of course, knowing things are very important, but the foundational principles of safety that's existed, like you said, for a very, very long time, are always going to be there. Whether we're in the metaverse, whether in virtual reality, augmented reality, whether you're in the car and you're hooking up your iPhone, or you're on a Mac, or you're in your computer, it's all the same in terms of the foundation of safety, and that is the safety of yourself personally, internally. So I always say that you do not have to be the most tech savvy or security savvy, but seeking out resources and people that can help you along the way to figure out, okay, what is one thing that I'm missing? What's one thing that I can do today to up level my security? So we just talked today for about a lot of different things. So what's one thing that sticks out to you where you feel like, oh, I need to do that more than the others? And then pencil that into your calendar or put in your calendar on your phone and make sure that you do that in the next week. And just little tiny things as much as possible, because you don't want to be in a circumstance where something is happening to you live at that moment and then you have to remember all the 50,000 things that you have to input. So just remembering one thing per week and doing that and leveling up your security is most important.
That's so practical too, like because then it's like you're actually working step to step. As you said, no, you're not going to know everything, and you're not going to be. No one's seeking perfection, but as long as you're working towards being more safer and more secure, definitely. One of the things that as we were talking, I was just thinking about this. A lot of our mosques aren't very secure
Mhm.
either. I don't think they take that as something that they need to be secure about, especially maybe they talk about security with guards on, in front of or police. Sometimes during Salah, you'll see police at guarding the mosque. What are some um, tips for mosques that they could take to make them more secure as well? Um, Especially when we're seeing a lot of online giving. Now you can go into a mosque and give through the Mohid systems and things like that.
I would make sure that they have good passwords in all of their systems. That's typically, it's something we say all the time, but it's actually one of the most important things to have as a community, as a mosque, an organization. Where are you storing the data? How are you logging into a server or a website? So that's definitely what I would do. I would install like security plugins on your website. And to be honest, it's really important to hire a security consultant or a professional to come in. And you can probably pull your community, your Muslim community, and ask if there's anyone who that works in cybersecurity and is able to do a service, and you negotiate something that works best for both parties so they can come in and make sure that their community is safe and secure. So I would start in the community first, and then you can obviously post online and see if anyone can come in to see where your vulnerabilities are and help you fix that.
That's so, and that goes right back to the point that you had started with, like when we, recognizing our vulnerabilities, whether they are in our psyche, our spirituality, or being vulnerable online. Unless you know those vulnerabilities, you can't build a secure relationship, or a
Yes.
secure platform, or a secure organization. So,
Exactly.
but thank you so much, Fareedah. That was a very insightful conversation, and we're just really proud of you, and we hope to see you go into, many more horizons to be conquered. But thank you so much for being here. Anything else that you'd like to say before we end the show?
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor. This is absolutely amazing. And I appreciate you for having an episode like this because it's very, very important. And thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate you.
Well, that's all for us from the Justice for All Now team. Thank you all for joining us and for being part of the show. We're going to be talking next week to on about the climate change crisis and what some activists are doing to help those who are migrating from countries that have been suffering because of climate change.